A mix of presentations within and outside of our faculty. And then we also will have at the end a panel discussion with our institutional directors relating to research, internationalization, and innovation. So get your questions ready for the panel. They are here out of their busy schedules. Ask all those questions you need support with or some help with. They are here to help us. Our first speaker for this session is Prof. Mishi, and he's going to speak about the application of behavioral economics to identify and correct decision biases in implementation science. Prof. Mishi.
Thank you so much. Greetings, everyone. As has been said, I'm Silen Mishi in the Department of Economics, and I'm here in Sciences. So I hope we'll be able to relate and we get along well together. Just waiting for the presentation. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about behavioral sciences, but I get much comfort because I see there's this common word here on the banner here. So that means I'm not completely out of touch with what has been said already, maybe over the few days. Oh, so it's not moving. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So just to give a context from economics, we get to understand a Homo economicus versus a Homo sapien. By that, a Homo economicus is someone who is very much rational to the extent that, for example, if you tell them that this is bad, they would actually understand and avoid something that is bad. If the price goes up, they actually avoid to buy that particular good. That is just like in simple terms. If you tell them that don't go out, you are likely to contract COVID-19, they don't really go out at all. So they're very much understanding human being. On the other end, we have a Homo sapien, a person that is more real. Have got some kind of bounded rationality. It's not very rational and is constrained by some kind of really, memory and computational capacity. So they cannot calculate very much in terms of the risk that they are exposed to. They cannot really compare all the pieces of information and make a decision. I think we can relate more to the Homo sapien than to the Homo economicus, as I'm going to outline very much, shortly. Now, as we do research, one of the ideas is that research needs to go back to society. And in most cases, we want to influence behavior, to have some behavioral change. We want people to do things differently for the better, for that matter. And we're looking here at the team here that is saying the latest research shows that we really should do something with all this research. We need to do something with the research that we do, but how can we make that research make sense into the community? Yes, we do care about implementation science because we need to transmit research outside the confines of the university. And I'm not going to speak much, including the criticism that we found in the National Development Plan 2030 that actually says that there's poor knowledge production that often does not translate also into innovation. Dr. Kumede, maybe you'll be very much interested to pick that up. So this is criticism that is there. But also the challenge is that when we want to do implementation, we're not dealing with, with objects. We're dealing with human beings. It's human beings that have to uptake the recommendations. It's human beings that have to carry forward the recommendations. Now, when we come to economics, we deal with what we call satisfaction, what we call optimization, what we call utility. So when you are making a decision, we are saying that you make the decision to maximize satisfaction of yourself of the bigger society. So that means when we talk even about implementation, you have the objective to what? To do the best possible. That is the kind of thinking that is there. But I want to bring and tie it back to implementation science. We have different definitions here. Dissemination, I think we often talk about dissemination. We spread the information out there. It is all fine. Implementation is all an effort to get the best practice out there. Then implementation science, now we're looking at the scientific study of method to promote that systematic uptake of research findings and other evidence-based practice into routine practice. And that is where now we really need to look at the behavior more critically. And if I am biased and I try to attempt to link it to science, definitely dissemination only of research results, clinical practice guidelines is usually driven by research findings, but don't seem to do much on their own to improve practice. Do people really change because we have told them that this is the best way to approach a certain a pandemic? We have seen during COVID-19, and we can always go back to COVID-19. When you tell people that they need to wash their hands so that they cannot get to contract some pathogens and the like, do they really do that? If we talk about we need to conserve water, do really people now do that? So we know that making people aware only is not what is not enough. And that is where we're coming from. So here I put a process of of science that you can start from your preclinical research and go on, but the whole idea is to improve processes, to improve outcomes. So there are different stages there that we can talk about in terms of that. And I've highlighted here in blue the characteristics of individuals as a very critical element. That is where a human being comes. To understand the mind of a human being, to understand how a human being behaves, because it's a human being that you are going to tell what to do. It's a human being that is going to see the poster. It's a human being that is going to either want to use, to prescribe an injection or to do something. It's a human being. Now, when we come to the human being, there are two systems that are at play. System one, it is the unconscious one. 80% of the decision, the action that we take, they are based on the system one, unconscious. System two, the conscious part, is 20%. Now think of it, decision that we make, 80% of them very unconscious. So we need them to be able to work on this particular system of unconscious so that it is very much appropriate. It can give us the good results that we want. So many policies and intervention make the wrong assumption that individuals behave the same way. So the way I behave, we think that the next person behaves the same way. And that is why recommendation normal that they are just generalization, but which is a challenge. Let's take, for example, here, does the fact of knowing that you should be doing something, e.g., exercising regularly, result in you doing it? You might know that it is good to not eat certain products, but you end up eating them. You know that it is good to exercise regularly, but you end up not. Why? The goal is for fitness. You're going to the gym. If there are stairs there and there's an escalator, why would you see people going to the gym but going to the escalator? The goal is to what? To burn some calories, right? So you can actually burn some calories by going through the steps. So you're achieving the overall goal is that. But someone chooses to go to the escalator so that they can quickly go to the gym. So the whole idea there is very much immediate to say, I want to get to the gym. But what is the overall goal of even going to the gym? It is to burn some calories, which can start to be achieved basically through here. So we do that in everyday life because we're using the 80% part is the one that actually drives what we do. But if we're so conscious, if we're using the 20% element, then we could actually act differently. Okay. Well, it is, be honest, don't read throughout all the aspects, just follow through what I'm doing. If you are to make a decision to save people from a pandemic, and you are told that program 1, you can respond and you save 200 people. Then in program 1, again, response B is risky. It has a 1/3 chance to save all people, but a 2/3 chance to save no one. Which one would you choose from program 1? A. I hear some A. All right, let's quickly go to program 2. 400 people would die for sure. And response D, there's a 1/3 chance that no one would die and 2 chance that everyone would die. Which one would you choose? C. I hear some C. D. All right. The framing was different in the 2 programs, but the content for each choice of the program is basically the same. But you see, you actually looked closely because they appear to be very much different, but it's exactly the same. It's just an issue of wording. When this experiment was conducted, 73% picked response A from program 1, while 78 chose response D for program 2. So there were inconsistencies there, just because of how the intervention or how the choices of the program were framed. So framing actually matters because it then influence. Why? Because with that 80%, we just see a word, people will die, right? 1/3, and we're talking about here it will save people, and here we're avoiding this because people will die because it's the negative part. So you're trying to avoid anyone dying, but the options are basically the same. But the other one was more on a positive. So when we are making recommendations, how do we frame our recommendations so that we can improve uptake? All right, thank you. So it won't happen by admonition, but we need really to be strategic. If we look at it, that economic model that I was talking about, it says economic agents are assumed to be perfectly rational. But who are economic agents? We're talking about individuals. We're talking about government. We're talking about organizations. We're talking about anyone. A practitioner is an economic agent. If you look at it so closely, because they're making decisions. In economics, we're starting to study that particular decisions. Agents are assumed to perfectly understand the risk and uncertainty. Agents are assumed to be self-interested, but that is not true. Sometimes we see that there is greater departure from this rational agent because of the different biases that we are going to look at. And behavioral economics is a branch in economics then that incorporates human psychology and the models of economic behavior to say, let's understand how a person makes the decision. That kind of 80%, 20% is what we're working toward to understand and to ride on that when making recommendations. So we are concerned with the systematic departures from that rational choice. We identify these particular biases and then be able to guide in terms of how to better frame your recommendations, or even so to understand the decisions of individual or the behavior of individual when you are working on any project. Possibly you want to recommend some kind of intervention in terms of medication, in terms of the behavior, what needs not to be done. Let me quickly go to some examples of some biases. Learned helplessness bias. We believe that one has little control over a situation. You see, it applies in some cases. People feel very much helpless. They feel that there's nothing that you can do, and that actually makes them not take up medication for chronic condition. For example, they think that the world is over, so I cannot take up. That is the mind of a person. They think that the best way to maximize their happiness and the like is not to take the medication because they feel helplessness, so it pushes them towards not taking the medication because otherwise it's a burden. There's also social influence bias. What society thinks and what I'm doing, is it in line with society? Then pluralistic ignorance. We believe that others are doing this. Then we act in such a way because we believe others are doing this. So for example, if we had believed that majority of people are not taking COVID-19 vaccine, then we end up also not taking up that particular vaccine. Then we end up having majority of people not taking up vaccine because of what? That pluralistic ignorance. So there's no uptake if there's pluralistic ignorance. I'm going to skip some and I can attend to them in question because I have two minutes left now. How then do we address this? There is a system to actually get to identify and correct. First is very much to understand the choice. What exactly are the choice being made now by what? By the individuals. Then when you have that, it's a matter of understanding how are you going to intervene to target that kind of behavior so that you can influence the choices and you monitor and then the scaling up. So behavioral economics helps with this particular process of understanding how people are making the choices currently, what source of bias exists, and then be able to design now how to correct that bias going forward. We say that what you communicate is as important as how you communicate it, as a simple example from what? From framing effect. All right, lastly, behavioral insights have then become very much common in many organizations, including local governments. I think in Western Cape, I have started Tshwane municipality as well. Have started here in South Africa. Those are the local government that have started to have now behavioral insights teams within them. And South African Revenue Service is one also organization that is building a behavioral insight team. And one example here, you see that outside South Africa, there are many entities that have started to have to incorporate behavioral insights units. One is when, Deft Cameroon actually established a behavioral insights team. And you can see that the reason behind that was making public service more cost effective, easier for citizens to use, improving outcomes, and enabling people to make better choices for themselves. So behavioral, understanding the behavior of human beings and that kind of, systems thinking in terms of trying to maximize the best outcome by individuals is what leads us to what? To have these behavioral insights institutions working. Understand that small changes to the extent in which people choose have dramatic effect on what? On behavior. That is why you see this sometimes there's emphasis on the choice architecture to say, how do you actually present the choices to individual? How you present them in terms of wording, in terms of the order of the choices does matter. So if you start to if I ask someone publicly to say that, have you got vaccinated now? If I ask her, she might start to think, what are others going to say if I say I didn't get vaccinated? So she responds in a way that is socially acceptable. Then you go to the next person, it's can I deviate from what others have already done? But if I ask privately to say, I'm asking questions privately, she might respond differently, and the other person can also respond truthfully. So we need to understand these biases so that we can be able to collect data and to process data and to make recommendations, understanding these kind of biases and be able to correct them so that they don't influence the uptake of what? Of our science. So let me pause here. Yes, I think I got to the end. Yeah.
Thanks, Prof. Mishi. Are there any questions from the floor for Prof. Mishi or online? Zuki, can you help me quickly? Zuki, can you check online quickly?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof, for the very insightful presentation. You know that as a faculty, we enjoyed the presentation last time, which actually culminated to a joint collaboration that we have been doing. Just clarity on the pluralistic behavior. Individuals more often than not conform to some social norms for fear of being excluded or to receive approval. Now, how can one, in view of this, and also even the information cascading that is obtainable, where a group of people have already said this, you want to just join. So how could one then use behavioral modification amidst these challenges, in enhancing health outcomes? Thank you.
Should I? go on it? Okay.
You can answer.
Sure, thank you. So what happens is that such kind of behavior is not always bad. One is that if we know that people actually conform to some kind of, communal kind of behavior, then if we want to bring an intervention like during COVID-19, you can actually start to then inform and educate those influential people. Through network analysis, you can identify the influential people, inform them. Everyone else is going to want to do the same thing. So they end up conforming to that. So the main purpose is to get to understand who are the nucleus people that influence everyone. So if it is a bad kind of behavior that is going, again, you educate them, then everyone else is going to conform to that behavior. But with pluralistic ignorance now, what happens is that no one is actually seeing what the other is doing, but it's just an assumption. You assume that the other people are not getting vaccinated, so I'm not going to get vaccinated. You don't get to confirm them. And that is when now, when you do research, you actually outline the number of people that are, for example, getting vaccinated. Then it helps now to distill that kind of misunderstanding that majority of people are not being vaccinated. So the communication then now need to be framed in such a way that it reveals the true behavior that is happening within society, and then distill that kind of misunderstanding that exists.
Thanks, Prof. We have one more question here from the back.
Not being facetious at all.
Yeah.
Why do people park right in front of the gym for 3 rows, but they're going to gym for 45 minutes? How do they understand that?
So parking in front of the gym, right, right there, is to shorten the distance, right, to get to the gym. And that is exactly like what I said earlier, to say the assumption is that in the mind, so individuals are having what the bigger goal to say, I want to burn some calories, so I'm going to the gym. And that is the bigger goal. They don't understand that the process of going there can actually help them to achieve the ultimate goal. So you already fixed on that particular far beyond, because the 80% is telling you going to the gym is what helps you. And it's not any other activity rather than taking a walk. You're welcome.
Thanks, Prof. Any last question? Does not seem like it. Thank you very much. Can we give a round of applause for Prof. Michi? Thanks. Our next presentation is a pre-recorded presentation by Ms. R. Chen, and it's about South African young adult females' experiences of social media use during adolescence.
Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca Chen and I will be presenting on the topic of my dissertation, which is about South African young adult females' experiences of social media use during their adolescent years. So as we know, social media has become a vital part of many young adults' lives, in particularly among females, who actively participate in various social media platforms. And these could be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and many more. These social media platforms create a sense of entertainment and helps the young adults stay informed about the current trends that's happening in the world, or it's just for leisure whenever they feel the need to. Although social media has also created negativity for these young adults, such as their lack of self-esteem, having feelings of anxiety and depression, or the social media apps just causes difficulties for them to function in their daily lives. So Jonathan Haidt has a manuscript that he's still currently writing on, which mentions the importance of investigating these negative phenomena, as well as what social media does to young adults. The aim of this dissertation is to explore how social media use potentially affects the mental health of young female adults in the South African context. There are three objectives that the study comprises of: to retrospectively explore and describe the experiences of participants' social media use as adolescents, to explore and describe the perceived consequences of teenage social media use of participants, and to provide a comprehensive schema therapy perspective of the data collected through objectives 1 and 2. In 2019, over 3.5 billion people in the world used social media, and with over 30 million users in South Africa used social media in 2020. That is about 42.8% of South Africa's population. There's a consistent correlation that exists between the duration of social media use and adverse mental health outcomes that has been studied by Height. And majority of the studies has also found that it is pronounced in females and teenagers to have these adverse effects. It has been reported that 27% of 18 to 24-year-old South Africans used social media in 2023. It has been also shown that 13.4% of the 27% were females. A lot of South African researchers have recognized the impacts that social media has on the mental health of adolescents, of young adults, and especially females. Social media has a significant influence on females' lifestyle choices and habits, especially amongst female students. Since adolescence is a crucial period for personality development, these negative effects may have both immediate and lasting consequences. One way to describe and explain problematic personality development is through the development of early maladaptive schemas, or the EMS, which are cognitive and emotional structures formed during childhood and adolescence. I'll explain more about this later on. A higher percentage of females use social media platforms compared to males, at 51.1%. Despite growing up among significant political and cultural shifts that are shaped by their previous generation, a substantial portion of South Africa's younger generation possesses the adaptability to align their attitudes and way of thinking with prevailing global trends. The definition of mental health, according to Feldman and T. Milagrito, is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. Psychological health concepts has three fundamental attributes: the maintenance of a consistent and reasoned experience of contentment in one's life, the employment of a problem-solving approach to behavior, and the possession of the capability to perceive one's environment with a notable absence of need distortion. As such, the adolescent phase is a very complicated stage where the cognitive and emotional changes from brain maturation and having to balance both independence from their parents yet still preserving their family connections would shape their identities into adulthood. Since adolescents' brains are still developing, decision making can be quite difficult. There are 7 negative impacts that social media has on the mental states of individuals who use social media quite often. Firstly, isolation, which is continuously using social media and engaging in online activities that they experience a sense of loneliness when interacting face to face. Self-absorption is when an individual becomes absorbed in the posts they share about themselves. FOMO, Individual feels anxious and has a lack of self-esteem due to seeing online activities they do not feel included in. 4. Anxiety and or depression is when an individual compares themselves to others they see online to the point that they start feeling anxious about their selves, their bodily image, and their lifestyles, and therefore leading to depression. Distraction is when an individual gets distracted from daily activities due to excessively using social media on a daily basis. Number 6, trolling or cyberbullying. When individuals face emotional harm from critical judgments and opinions that are expressed by others. And then number 7, risky behavior. Individuals compromising their values, principles, and mental well-being by participating in hazardous online activities to gain popularity. So basically, risky behaviors. Females actively using social media, therefore, can lead to lowest levels of self-esteem due to, for example, physical comparisons, lifestyle comparisons, etc. However, there are positive impacts to social media as well. For example, you can easily connect with others and therefore you can shape your identity and behavior through the connection and interaction with people. You can discuss events, interests, and topics and things that you have in common with each other. And this creates a sense of belongingness and emotional support. It promotes social well-being, positive mental health, and self-rated health. It also gives educational advantages. For example, the preferences for readily accessible interactive educational content and course materials that are conveniently available through any smart devices. And you can easily access information. We know that social media creates interpersonal connections for friends. And as previously mentioned, social media is more prominently used amongst females. And therefore, it can cause more mental health issues than males, such as anxiety and depression. Younger social media users are also prone to worse mental health symptoms, than older generations. The calls for future research addressing each age group and both genders has been noted. Personality can be defined as a constellation of traits and behaviors that shape an individual's unique adaptation in life, distinctive attributes of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors influencing their self-perception, belief systems, and interpersonal dynamics. Personality develops with time. It doesn't have a fully formed personality, but rather temperaments. Temperament is constitutionally based distinctions shown early in life as behavioral impulses amongst individuals. A child's inner temperament is developed by their interactions and the environment they are in. In the earlier stages of life, personality is substantially shaped by family, primary caregivers, and guardians. If problematic environments and interactions are sustained, it could lead to chronic intrapsychic and interpersonal problems, which leads to the main reason for problematic personality development. Adolescence is a critical developmental period where individuals undergo new self-concept adjustments and acquire new personality changes through self-discovery, and therefore it could lead to stress. Adolescence transition to young adulthood can be affected by environmental and nurturing factors. The factors that influence personality development is like forming friendships or building relationships, having effective communication with other individuals, and the ability to problem solve. Social media is designed for communication on various platforms, event planning, fostering swift communication, and therefore can lead to good communication skills, and it can also enhance it. The schema therapy, or ST for short, is a psychotherapy approach consisting of various psychological concepts and interventions to address clients with personality disorder. Schemas are emotional imprints that surround an individual in their early stages of life, originating from the nuclear family. There are 5 core needs according to Jung, such as secure attachment to others, autonomy, competence, and sense of identity, freedom to express valid needs and emotions, spontaneity and play, realistic limits, and self-control. So early maladaptive schemas, as previously mentioned for a bit, is a set of memories, emotions, bodily sensations, and cognitions that revolve around a childhood theme, such as abandonment, abuse, neglect, or rejection. EMS is rooted from the basic emotional needs throughout the interactions of a child's environment, and there are 5 domains consisting of 18 schemas, of which only possibly 9 are likely to be used. Domain 1 is impaired autonomy or rejection, and this is where abandonment, instability, defectiveness, and shame, social isolation, and alienation can occur. Domain 2, impaired autonomy and performance, is like dependence, incompetence, enmeshment, undeveloped self, and failure. Domain 3 are the impaired limits, such as insufficient self-control or self-discipline. Domain 4 is like other directedness, approval seeking, recognition seeking, and domain 5 is overvigilance and inhibition, unrelenting standards, and hypercriticalness. So unlike the EAS, which is early adaptive schemas, is when the core needs are met. Early adaptive schemas is a broad, pervasive theme or pattern comprised of memories, emotions, cognitions, and neurobiological reactions regarding oneself and one's relationship with others, developed during childhood or adolescence, elaborated throughout one's lifetime, and leading to healthy functioning and adaptive behavioral dispositions. There are only a total of 15 schemas described by Lockwood and Perez, taking into consideration that there are 3 schemas that are relatively new and have not yet been examined. So in terms of the EAS, they are opposites from EMS. So for domain 1 in this regard, we're looking at disconnection and rejection. So they will have stable attachment, self-acceptance and lovability, social belonging. And then domain 2 would be impaired autonomy and performance, where individuals would have healthy self-reliance or competence, healthy boundaries and developed self, success. Domain 3 is impaired limits. In this case would be healthy self-control or self-discipline. Domain 4 would be other directedness, and here it's self-directedness. Domain 5, over vigilance and inhibition. In this case would be realistic standards and expectations. In terms of South African literature, based on majority of the studies that were conducted, social media has negative influences on the well-being of adolescents. For example, using smartphones before sleeping can increase stress levels, or addiction to social media sites can cause symptoms of depression and anxiety. Anxiety is also caused by social media use, and social interactions can lower your self-esteem and life satisfaction. Social media has an advantage in distributing and reinforcing salutary societal norms and values. It can also improve educational content, and it doesn't necessarily compromise interpersonal relationships with family and friends. It does not necessarily have to also break societal values or lifestyles of individuals. So, exploratory and descriptive qualitative methods were used. A qualitative method is defined as an exploration and evaluation of an individual's subjective experiences and perspectives, which are aimed at elucidating their perceptions of a specific phenomenon or issue. As such, individuals were able to provide their subjective experiences and perspectives about the topic at hand, which is around social media, and their experiences of it. For the population and sampling method, non-probability, purposive, convenience, and snowball sampling was used, and a total of 10 individuals took part in the interview until data saturation was achieved. 18 to 21-year-olds were selected to refrain from shifting too much from the adolescence period, since potential challenges might have developed in the earlier stages of development. And this is to explore the development of the schemas in young adults who have been using social media since adolescence, to understand potential impacts during this critical period of cognitive and emotional maturation, as previously discussed. For the inclusion and exclusion criteria, my focus was on females between 18 to 21 years old, not an active schoolgoer, has been using social media daily during their adolescent years, must be fluent in conversational English, and must be a South African citizen. For the exclusion criteria are males not between 18 to 21 years old, rarely use social media daily, not fluent in conversational English, not a South African citizen. So with data analysis, I have not yet found any prominent themes. However, I have seen a few patterns showing itself. So during the data collection, I have seen by a few participants that majority of them are dependent on social media, and a few of them have compared themselves to other women on social media by bodily image and by lifestyle, such as the influencers, celebrities, or even just girls whom they find more attractive than themselves or live a better life than themselves. Some of the participants have also mentioned that the reason why they started using social media was not because of their family, but mainly their friends, because the way that they feel as if they fit in with the group if they download or install any social media applications. A few of the participants have also mentioned that they did not know how to use social media in the beginning. But once they've gotten the hang of it, they started making posts and stories on Instagram, for example, and that they wanted to get as many likes or followers so that they feel good about themselves, as if it's an accomplishment, and they take pride in the likes and follows that they get, and that this makes it seem as if they're trying to get attention in a way. I have yet to analyze more of the data that's collected and to look at the possible themes that's developing through the repeated patterns and how it correlates to the schema therapies EMS and EAS. Thank you so much all for listening to my PowerPoint presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at this email address. And I will be writing an article about the study, and hopefully I get to distribute this article soon.
Thank you, Ms. Chin, in your absence for that presentation. We are going to move to an interactive session now. I just need to ask the directors, would you prefer to sit here already or afterwards? Afterwards, all right. So our directors of institutional research, in no particular order, is Dr. Priscilla Mensah, the Director of Research and Support Management. Then we have Dr. Motapo, it's development, sorry. And Dr. Motapo, the Director of Research and Support Management. And then Dr. Ngumede from the Innovation Office, the Director there. So we're going to listen to each director in turn, presenting some thoughts with us. And thereafter, we will have a Q&A panel with them all together, and then we can pose questions to them.
Good morning. Thank you very much to the organizers for the invitation to be here. We always enjoy opportunities to engage with staff and students. So please also invite us when you have your faculty orientation with postgraduate students. We like to get the word out there on the support that's available to them. So for the purpose of this invitation, I had assumed that the room would be a mix of academics and postgraduate students. And the work that the Research, Innovation and Internationalization portfolio under the DVC does is aligned with the Vision 2030 strategy, because as you can see there, as part of the focus areas, we have impactful research, innovation, and internationalization. And then I also wanted to make colleagues aware that we are actively working on a new research and innovation strategy that will cover the next 5 years. You will receive a lot more information about it. It is going through the approval processes. And what informs this new strategy is global research agenda, regional research agenda, the National Development Plan, the DSI Decadal Plan, and other documents as shown, other national policies as shown in the slide. And then I just wanted to pause here and highlight some of the principles that inform the strategy, that we wish to be investing for impact, focusing on transformation, sustainability, ensuring strategic coherence and positioning, and also Ubuntu. And then I hope that you can see yourself in the objectives of the strategy. My office, the Office for Research Development, focuses on providing support for emerging researchers, and so that's postgraduate students and emerging researchers. Now, many people ask, okay, we want a definition. What is an emerging researcher? And often funders define an emerging researcher in the context of funding, where they say the PhD must not be older than 5 years. in order for you to be considered emerging. But the support that the office provides actually goes towards researchers that are not yet established. And we use NRF rating as a proxy for becoming established. So if you are not yet an NRF rated researcher, the Office of Research Development finds ways and means to fund postgraduate students and Mandela researchers generally. And then I just wanted to remind you about our 6 research themes and our strategic trajectories. We have retained these in the new strategy. And so as an emerging researcher, these are the tools that you have in your toolbox. And so today you will be meeting research development, the innovation office, and research support. But actually, there are many more support mechanisms at the institution that ensure that we have a vibrant research and innovation culture. And so again, I wanted to highlight that within the cohort of emerging researchers, students, postgraduate students, young academics, and we find various mechanisms to support this cohort of researchers. Right. So in the Office of Research Development, we provide postgraduate funding. We have various government support programs that are targeting young academics, like the Nurturing Emerging Scholars Program, the NGAP funded by DHET, and others. The office also provides scholarships and fellowships and has a unit for statistical support, as well as manages all the research ethics processes at the institution. And then I think it's important for us to remember that at Mandela, our postgraduate enrollment targets have been declining over the years. This is not something new. We've been having conversations about it. And when the slide was prepared, we were at 2,600, just over. And today, when I checked, we're a little over 3,000 in terms of our postgraduate enrollment. And we are slightly higher than we were last year, which is positive. But our target, as you can see, is 3,920. And so we need to look at how we work collectively to address challenges within the system and ensure that we have an enabling environment for postgraduate students. I want to highlight in this slide that it's important for postgraduate students to apply early for funding. There are various funding mechanisms available, and we have that on the website of the Office of Research Development. Due to time constraints, I will not stay on this slide, but I will highlight a couple of funding opportunities that are available just really quickly. So the NRF has partnered with Fulbright to provide a coordinated, complete support for a 4-year PhD program in the US. This call goes out regularly, so please be on the lookout for that. And then Mandela also has a postgraduate research scholarship. The call will be published next month and is usually open for a month, and it funds honors, masters, and PhD students. Sorry. It funds honors, masters, and PhD students. And if you have received funding under the scholarship, you can apply for 6 to 12 months extension support. Based on our new policy, we provide full cost of study and partial cost of study, and you will see these are the amounts that are usually published in the call framework. These amounts were revised from the old PGRS values and are aligned now with the intention nationally to provide significant funding to postgraduate students to ensure that they enroll full-time and are able to progress through their studies. The advantage of both PGRS and NRF is that once you are captured at honors, and you maintain your academic performance, you will be prioritized for funding at master's and doctoral level. And so we really want to encourage honest students and supervisors to encourage honest students to apply for funding. The same goes for masters. If you are funded at master's level, you are prioritized for doctoral funding if you maintain your academic performance. And then for the academics in the room, there are 3 categories of internal research grants that we fund, one for teaching relief, then the Research Development Fund, and the Conference Travel Fund. I do want to highlight that past staff members are eligible to apply for the Research Development Fund as well as the Conference Travel Fund. The other thing I neglected to mention when I was talking about scholarships is that there's a funny period after students graduate that at Mandela is referred to as Z registration. And many students assume that during Z registration, they will not be funded. But actually, funders do fund you in that period. So if you are transitioning from honors to masters or masters to PhD, and you will have a Z registration, please consider that in your application for funding because funders cover that period. Okay, so then these are the eligibility criteria for the internal research grants and the links for the application, and each grant category is 40,000. The caveat is that the funds have to be spent in the current academic year, so funds don't roll over for these grants, but the advantage is that you can apply every year for funding. And you can apply if you are eligible for each of those categories. So that is significant funding. Then we have a category of funding for postdoctoral and research fellows. In here are the eligibility for criteria for hosts. So as a host, you identify a postdoctoral or research fellow that you wish to recruit. This is the criteria for the fellows. This is also the eligibility criteria for the research fellows. We have exclusion criteria, and I'm walking through the slides because you will receive it and spend a little more time on it. Because the fellowships are targeting emerging researchers, we exclude academics who already have an NRF rating. Fellows may apply for 2 cycles of funding based on the fact that they are not continuing on the same research, but they may not apply for a 3rd cycle of funding. The application process is outlined here, and our next call will also open in September for funding in 2025. Now, these are the grant values for the research fellowships, the postdoctoral and research fellowships. We are aware that they require revising because we have spent some time looking at the values of postgraduate scholarships, and it's now time to do a little bit of benchmarking on the fellowship values, which have not changed for some time now. And then I have to say that postdoctoral and research fellows at Mandela really contribute to our research culture. So today you have met Prof. Mishi, Dr. Govender, both of them are host researchers at Mandela, and we have a great young cohort of about 130 fellows at Mandela doing really great work. And as you can see, the institution has invested significantly in the number of fellows, which has increased from 54 in 2016 to 137 in 2023. So that's a serious increase in the number of fellows. And the intention here is that not only do they contribute to research at Mandela, but they also augment supervisory capacity. So I want to encourage the supervisors in the room who do not yet host research and postdoctoral fellows to consider it. And when you do have a fellow, to also use them in supervising postgraduate students. And this is their performance over the last couple of years, which is very impressive. In the next couple of slides, I would like to highlight some of the funding opportunities that target academics. I will not go into a lot of the detail, just the highlights in the interest of time. So Tutuka is funded by the National Research Foundation. This is a partnership between universities and the NRF, and it targets academics who are employed full-time, permanent, or on a fixed-term basis. And there are 3 funding tracks: the PhD track for academics enrolled for their PhD, the post-PhD track for those who already have a PhD but require post-PhD research training, and the NRF rating track for researchers who have had a PhD for some time now but wish to become NRF rated. These are the various eligibility criteria. The NRF, in looking at Tutuka, has a requirement for age, but for women, you can submit a motivation. The age restriction is 45. You can submit a motivation if you are over the age of 45 for why you require or should be considered that requirement be waived. And for the Tutuka funding, it's important that you engage with research development as you prepare your application. And then the NRF, in its transformation drive, also partnered with First Round Foundation to launch the Black Academics Advancement Program. This is a program that also has a PhD and a post-PhD track. It provides lecturer replacement, running expenses, and funding for international visits. These are the amounts that are funded. And so in making a decision about whether you will apply for Tutuka or for BAAP, it depends where you are with your research and whether you wish to have time off to focus on completing your PhD or on your post-PhD research so that you can use these funds for lecturer replacement. And then I want to also remind you that Mandela has a license for research professional, which has over 22,000 funding opportunities and 10,000 funders. The beauty about this platform is that you can customize it and set up your own profile so that you receive alerts for grants that you will be eligible for. So in this presentation, I have really mainly focused on national funding opportunities that are available, but there's a wide range of international funding opportunities. And instead of bombarding staff and students with memos, this is a much more sophisticated way of ensuring that you have access to that information. You receive the alerts, and it's alerts for funding that you are eligible for. And so if you have not yet registered on the platform, we appeal that you do so. These are some very great recommended readings. And on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mensah. We'll now call forward the next speaker, Dr. Gumede. So while you're still listening to our speakers, you can get your questions ready. If there is anything, you can see some of the exciting opportunities that is available. And sometimes we don't know about all of these because we might miss that memo that have come through, but they do come through quite regularly.
Good day, everyone. So I'm from the Innovation Office, and I'm going to be talking about knowledge transfer. I didn't want to assume that when we speak about innovation, we're all speaking about the same thing. So the type of innovation support that we're mandated to offer at the Innovation Office is, I can hear myself, is related to knowledge transfer, what was traditionally known as technology transfer. And the whole purpose of that is Is it? Is this better? Is this better? Away from speaker. Yeah. So where should I stand? Yeah. Knowledge transfer. That's better. Thanks. So the whole point of the office is set up to basically take research outcomes and commercialize them. And by commercialize, it's basically to transfer them to an organization that is outside the university, either for commercial purposes or for humanitarian purposes. Just lost the word now. So what I'm going to do is basically introduce the office to you, who we are, what we do. And in terms of our IP policy, that's usually what most people are interested in, who owns what. And then some of the successes we've had in the office in transferring technologies and what we're going to focus on moving forward. Okay. So in terms of who we are, so the innovation management supports of the university basically has 3 legs in terms of knowledge transfer. There's the innovation office, which is typically known as the technology transfer office. That is the dedicated office where you do all your disclosures, we manage the IP portfolio, and we manage the commercialization process. And a few years ago, the university realized that private companies or industry likes to work with other companies. Also, there were other technical reasons, and set up a company called Innovolve. This is the company that actually does the transaction for the transfer. So if the transfer is done through a spin-out company, this is where the equity to the company is held. And if it's done through licensing, this is the company that actually holds the license to that technology. And the university also wanted to encourage spinning out companies. And while if you're a researcher, you're good at doing the research and what you do, the university realized that the business aspect of the spin out needed support. And they partnered with a company called Engeli, which is in Humud. And they set up a technology or innovation incubator. That's Propeller Business Incubator. They usually are part of our research weeks. So if you want to meet them, you can also meet them. But I've also got their website in. So in terms of what we do, the process of technology transfer, the diagram on the left shows the actual process of technology transfer. So you do your research, which is where knowledge is created. And once you realize that there's actually something that is new, that is novel, that can benefit from protection or transfer to an external organization, you disclose that to the innovation office. And then the innovation office provides 3 support mechanisms. They help you fundraise for further developing the technology. We also help with the IP protection process. So if the technology requires patenting or registering the design, the university takes on all those costs and all this liaison. And we also help to market the technology if you don't have a partner that is identified to take up the technology. And once we get a partner, we do the negotiations on your behalf and the behalf of the university. And once a license agreement or a spin-out is concluded, that it's moved to Innovolve, the company I mentioned, and they do the actual transaction. So it can either be an existing spin-out or it can be a license, as I mentioned. That's how the office creates impact. But we also realize that the knowledge transfer is at the end of that process. So if you don't do the contracting earlier on in an appropriate manner, it becomes harder to actually transfer the knowledge. So the office does offer support in 2 ways in terms of earlier on when you're actually doing the contracting for the research. We help you with budgeting. So all IP that is generated from publicly funded institutions in South Africa are governed by the IPR Act. And if you don't calculate the indirect cost appropriately, it has impacts on how IP is owned. So if there's nothing else I say that you remember, the default position is if a publicly funded entity does research using public funds, the IP that's generated from that research is owned by that entity. So if we do research using public funds with a partner and we don't charge a full cost, then that IP belongs to Nelson Mandela University. If we want to negotiate a different IP ownership scheme, we have to charge the full cost of research, and that rate currently at Nelson Mandela is 40% of overhead. So that's the main message. But if you're not sure, you can talk to us. We will help you with the calculation. But there is a budgeting policy also on the intraweb that also helps you with how to calculate it. So, and just a note on this slide is that as a publicly funded institution, we do have an obligation to disclose the IP to the Innovation Office or to the Tech Transfer Office when we identify it. And our current policy says 90 days within the identification of that IP. And all the university IP is managed by the Tech Transfer Office or by the Innovation Office. So if you wanna patent your invention, you have to let the Innovation Office know. And in terms of who owns what, that's usually the most asked question. So according to our policy, this is policy 40101. So you can download it and go through it in detail. But the gist of it in terms of ownership is the university claims all IP that is created by its staff and students during the course of their work or the course of their studies, and by any other person who is engaged in research that's been done at Nelson Mandela unless contracted otherwise. So that is the default setting. And for that, it doesn't mean that the university gets all the benefit from the commercialization of that IP. The university has a very generous benefit sharing policy. So in terms of benefit sharing, for the first R1 million that the university receives from the commercialization of that invention, the inventors, which will be the person who did the research, typically will get 20% before any expenses are paid. And the rest of the balance will go to, if it's a self-funded entity, go to faculty, go to the university, and go to the Tech Transfer Office. And the split of the rest of the R1 million, above the R1 million, is also shown. The inventors get 30% post expenses. In terms of I'll introduce the portfolio. We have over 200 patents at the moment, and most of the areas of those patents is in renewable energy, pharmaceutical, and industrial biotech. And in terms of other metrics, so since the office started in 2007, we've received over 282 disclosures, filed over 221 patents, and the university has spun out 7 companies. You can go to the Innovov website if you want to see what those companies are. And in terms of incubation support through Propeller, the incubator has onboarded about 189 companies, of which 43% were associated with university students or graduates. Some of the successes we've had. So usually the disclosures we get from university research is early stage, so they need a little bit of funding to actually get to prototype stage, so where you can have a minimum viable product. So we have partnered with TIA in this respect, and we are one of the implementers of the TIA Seed Fund program. And we've supported over, at that time, it was 34 projects and about 19 million rands of projects, 19 million rands worth. Each project gets about between 650 and it can go up 650,000 and it can go up to R1 million. And some of the successes that have been commercialized by the university, I think everyone is aware of Maclosa. There's also another company called Rabanano. There was also a postgraduate student initiated company from the Faculty of Science. PV Insight is from the Faculty of Science, been out as well. And we've had 2 successful licenses. One is also from science. It is flow synthesis for manufacturing solar silicon, for manufacturing silicon grade, solar grade silicon. There was license to solar silicon, that's an active license. And the other one is a Gamma Tutor program that was licensed to Gamma Education Technologies. That was also a successful license, and benefit sharing was very generous. moving forward, I think Priscilla mentioned the strategy. So the three things we want to focus on. We would like to participate more on your faculty's engagement so we can promote awareness and facilitate disclosures. And the second one is we would like to focus on two things going forward, is to support industry collaboration. So if you've got particular industry-related contracts and you need IP support and budgeting support for those contracts, please contact us. We would like to increase those engagements and the spinning out companies. So literature shows that the most successful spin-out companies, especially technology companies, are those where the inventors are involved in the companies. We are looking at revising our policy to be more supportive of that, but we would like to encourage academics that also, and postgraduate students that would like to commercialize their research to be engaged in that, and we will designing our support to support that going forward. If you'd like to know more about what I've talked about, you can go to the Propeller website to know about incubation support that they offer. And you can also go to our Nelson Mandela Innovation Office intraweb. There's a commonly asked questions there that most people find useful. If you would like to know some of the successes in commercialization, the Innovolve website is also provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gumede. And then our last presentation for this part of the discussion is Dr. Motapo.
Hello, colleagues. Okay. Waiting for the awkward silence. Okay. Well, I'm representing research support and management, and we mainly support mid-career to establish researchers in our office, as well as flagship programs such as the research entities and research chairs, and as well as international grants, as well as some of the research-related contracts, which we work with the Innovation Office, and then some of the capacity building that is linked to the Research Development Office. So we work quite closely together as the Directorate. So these are some of the activities that we are doing in the office. We are doing grant support, and we have a dedicated person who works on the grant support, including sourcing and identifying research grants, and then also communicating those opportunities with researchers. We do the annual submission of the DHET outputs and manage that subsidy process, as well as all the reporting related to that from the faculties and also from the researchers. We also manage the entities, the finances of the entities and their annual reviews in terms of the activities that they undertake. We also do the Research Excellence Awards, which the call will be going out on Monday. So you should nominate or apply yourself. And then, of course, we work on the research-related policies in the university. We support researchers with the payment of page fees, and we work with the library with some of this, because some of the library has subscription to some of the publishing, and so then you don't need to pay if you publish within if you publish in journals in one of the publishers. And we do have registrations that are paid for that. So, but we do help with the page fees. Then, of course, we have the research committee, which is also housed in the Research Support Management Office, where we do the research sabbatical and research leave approval. And this is for the past staff. We work closely very much with all of these offices, and I've already mentioned that. We also support with the NRF rating process. We're actually going to have a workshop. I think it's at the end of the month. So that invitation is going to go out. There's going to be a rating workshop. There's going to be 2 of them, which will help prepare for a submission because the call is opening in November. So there are different types of external funding that we manage. We collaborate with SRMA, which is this is strategic resource mobilization and advancement. There's too much acronyms here. And they do get research donations. A lot of it comes as student bursaries, but some of it comes as research awards, which we then would locate specific researchers. If it's for example an ocean science related, then we prefer to find the mid-career researchers so that we can support them. Some of it is money that would be like a seed funding to start up a research project in a specific area. They also apply for tenders, and we often get invited. For example, recently we got invited to apply for some funding where we could host a research chair with the municipality. Quite interesting. And then, of course, quite a range of research grants and then research contracts. And these research contracts also bringing some income into the university because there's some overhead costs that get charged on the research contract. I'm going to skip this. So this is just a process flow for the grant proposal preparations. We are now going to include the proposal development phase because we are finding that researchers are submitting proposals that are not up to standard, and so they get rejected a lot. And often they're not coming to us to vet the proposal and the budgets. And so that also becomes a problem. And I would like to encourage you to come and engage with us before you submit your proposals so that we can help you and ensure that you meet all the eligibility criteria as well as the budgeting requirements and any other reporting requirements from the university. It also helps us when you come so that we can track what people are applying for, and then we can have a database of grants that people have applied for. We do the due diligence for all the grants. So some of the larger grants like the NIH and Wellcome Trust, all the big funders will require due diligence. So you need to contact our office so that we can give you that institutional information. And also they also need a designated authority, which is a responsible person in the institution who is a nominated person who manages that process on the platform. And so you need to come and contact us in order to proceed with your application anyway. And often at least in the past 2 months, we've had to resend the applications because they were not in a good standard and we had not seen them before. So, which is, it's not good for the researcher as well. Okay, some of the contracts approval forms require that they be routed through the research office. And sometimes we get them without the proposal or any other supporting information, and I don't sign them because I can't sign if I don't know what the proposal is about and I can't vet it. So that also contributes to the delay in some of the contract approval processes. So it's very important that you send that information timelessly, also the whole information, because it will be needed also by legal office. And it takes more than the 10 working days that are listed here to get that approval done at the legal office. So you can't submit it late and then expect it to go very fast. The process takes quite long at legal. We assist also with the cost center applications. All the auditing and funds claiming happen also through our office. We have a system for the output management, which is called RPMS, Research Publication Management System. And there's a dedicated person there who is the help desk, who, if you have any question, they help you. We did an information session at the beginning of the year. We're going to do another one before we open the system again. This helps us to track the outputs that are submitted before we send them to the DHEAD, and has reduced a lot of the manual processes. And it also pre-calculates the research subsidy units that are accrued per publication. We also work with some of the research partnerships and agreements in collaboration with the International Office, as well as international awards, and also some of the training workshops that happen with RD, but also that are outside. For example, with the SARIMA, which is the Southern Africa Research Management and Innovation Association, I think. I had to learn that. Yeah, just a quick overview. Currently, we have about 17 research chairs. The newest one is the AIDC chair in automotive engineering. We submitted about 3 for this year. Well, hopefully it will be 4. We have one that we are working on right now. And yeah, we generated about 571 publication units for 2022, which is about 72 million rand that will come to the university and be distributed across. And we currently have about 95 rated researchers. We're still waiting for more outcomes. And then we've raised about 41 million in terms of external and international research grants. And then for the NRF grants, we have about 50 million. A large part of that comes from the research chairs. Okay, so these are the people in my team. We have Tato Tanzi, who assists with all the grants processes, including all the contracts and due diligence. And then Patricia assists with the research chairs and other flagship programs, and then also on the RPMS. Then Carmen assists with the general outputs and page management, page fees, the ratings, as well as some of the competitive funding for rated researchers. Then we have Visha. Visha supports the research associates and HIVAs. These are extraordinary professors and ordinary professors who are appointed by faculty. So we manage that process. The approval for the HIVAs is done by the VC in the patch. What is it, Priscilla? Professoriate and something. Yeah, it's a titles committee that is chaired by the VC. Okay, then Kevin Johnson manages the incentive payments, so he manages that whole process. There are timelines. I think people don't see the emails sometimes, but there are very fixed deadlines on the incentive payments. And so some people have missed it. When you do publish at Mandela, a portion of the subsidy comes to you. I think 27% of it comes to you, and you are allowed to take 25% of that as a once-off bonus. And that has a timeline as well. So you have to write back to Kevin to say that you would like a portion to be paid as a once-off bonus. If you don't do that, then the funding just goes into your research cost center and you will not get it as a bonus. There's also the supervisors also get the M&D supervision incentive when they graduate masters and PhD students. And he also manages all the research entities reporting process and also provides the consolidated reports to the Research and Innovation Committee. And then we have Elizabeth, who is our research officer and also supports our department in various aspects and manages the creative outputs submission process. And then also when it's time for the output management, which happens at the beginning of the year, then she also supports that activity. Then we have Sivu, Cebu helps Tato a lot on the contracts administration and also on the databases of information that we have, including the grants. She keeps an up-to-date database, and then she does all the media communications in our office, as we would like to increase visibility of research and research activities at Mandela. And also, she also supports at the beginning of the year when we do the submission of the outputs. Is quite a hefty load for the beginning of the year. Okay, cool. That's it.
Thank you. While we get ready for the last few minutes for Q&A, we're going to set up our colleagues in front while they are seated. Get your questions ready, and let's keep it relatively informal, like a conversation in somebody's lounge or on the stoop or under the tree type of thing. Let's get those ideas flowing. For those online, if you could kindly put your questions in the chat and then we'll ask them on your behalf. We'll monitor it from there. All right. I'll start off the Q&A because I had some questions that colleagues have submitted before the event for those that couldn't be here. The first one is about gatekeeping when we need access to Mandela staff or Mandela students. And some of the comments that some of the researchers got was to get to the alumni office to become a gatekeeper. But the alumni office is saying that they are understaffed, number one, and they need some guidelines as to what is expected of them as a gatekeeper. So the question relates to, should any other stakeholder in the institution or the alumni office that should be a gatekeeper in this case be short-staffed? Where can researchers go to get some assistance to get that necessary gatekeeping to access this vulnerable population from an ethics point of view? It's a mouthful, that one. And then we also know there's a requirement if we would like to access students or staff across faculties, we need to get permission from the DVC's office, a letter of approval, etc. And the question relates to what's the standard procedure and time frame to obtain that permission from our DVC? And then the last question is my own question. I just thought maybe it's important for those that may not be aware, Dr. Motapo, this one is specifically for you, relating to the RPMS when we submit our articles. And the question is, should researchers only submit those outputs that's DHET funding eligible, or should they submit all of it? Because I think sometimes then the system is going to crash if there's too many. Would we like to take those three questions first and then another round?
Thank you very much for those questions. Actually, the two questions are the same. And I hear your reference to the alumni office, and I ask the colleagues to disregard it. So to provide clarity, when you get ethics approval for your research, you require, especially if you're going to be targeting Mandela staff and students, you require a gatekeeper letter from the Office of the DVC. And there's a process in place actually where the email request goes to the office and it's sent out. And I'm not sure why it's protracted, but if researchers require assistance, they can copy me in the letter so that I can circumvent the process and ensure that there's happiness.
Yeah, so for the RPMS, we do need the DHET accredited articles, not to load the system. It would be nice to have all the publications, but this is for us to submit to the D head and also to monitor the process as well. So I would encourage that only the D head accredited are submitted.
Thank you. So please upload those outputs on the system so that we can get the money to do more research, right? Please don't forget, it's early in the year when you just come from leave, I think, but there's a nice guideline to help you through the system. Any other questions from the floor?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I think my questions are directed to Dr. Mensah and Dr. Gumede. But just for Dr. Mensah, I just would like to know what conversations are happening and that we might have the liberty to the insights in terms of strengthening postgraduate funding support for part-time studies, particularly because a lot of our students in health sciences are healthcare professionals who are not always able to further their studies on full-time basis. So when we look at a lot of external fundings, the requirement is for full-time studies, and the only hope that they have for supplemental funding is through the university. And with the PGRS policy now as well, there's a bit of concerns there. Regardless the fact that they are working, the reality of the economy is that even if they're working, they still can't afford the research expenses. And also, perhaps this is for all three, or in terms of sustainability of the students that you are funding. The model that is currently being used, it's beautiful that you've got funding at honors level and your prospect for funding at master's and PhD levels are also a bit higher. So when you get to PhD level, I would think that the idea, or we wanting to motivate to retain those students to become academics for most of them who don't choose to go through the professional route, especially within the health sciences faculty. So in terms of, I'm not sure if other departments within the faculty are doing that, or even other faculties are doing that, but are there opportunities in terms of exposing PhD students into the academic space? So perhaps within the funding model, maybe say that certain PhD students need to be exposed maybe to lecturing, even if it's guest lecturing, or be brought into co-supervisions of honors or master's students. And then I think for Dr. Gumede, whenever I hear about innovation office, you talked about commercialization, patenting, and I wanted to run away because I'm from psychology. So I just want you to demystify innovation office for health sciences, and particularly, let's say, for example, if a PhD student from their research has developed guidelines and they would want to transfer that into maybe policy briefs. Is that something that the innovation office assists the researchers with? So just in terms of the role of the innovation office in the space of more biopsychosocial things and not technology and product development and so forth, just so that we know that with the research that we do, we can actually do something that is tangible with it and that we can implement into the society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about part-time funding, because this is the conversation that I've been having with Prof. Melariri. The limitation from the perspective of the research office is that we have budget constraints and we wish we could fund everyone, but the reality is that we have budget constraints. What the research shows is if you fund students adequately to enroll for full-time studies, they complete in time. So you end up with higher throughput rates, which is what the institution and the system wants. You might remember, with the recent onset of democracy, there was top slicing of scholarships where everybody got just a little bit. And the lessons we learned over about 25 years of that practice was that the throughput was very low because the funding was inadequate. And so from all the national reports that we read, from the studies that have been done, it shows that students should be funded preferably to enroll full-time. However, we understand that for the Faculty of Health Science, this is different for you, and that your programs are set up such that students enroll part-time. There are clinicians, there are colleagues that are doing other work that require that they enroll part-time. So we need to find a middle ground, as it were. And so this year, the middle ground was that we would fund students that were enrolled for programs that are only offered part-time. That was the middle ground that we found. We've rolled it out this year, but I think we need to have deeper conversations about whether the funding model is still fit for purpose and maybe how Faculty of Health Science can be assisted specifically, because I think the challenge for us is that we are servicing the entire Mandela system. And so a part-time student who is registered in science, who also wishes to be funded, would say, but the research office is unfair if I can't be funded, but I have a friend in health science who's funded. So we are open to conversation around how to provide improved scholarship models for students in the health science. So these are ongoing conversations that we have with Prof. Milariri. We will continue to have those conversations. So be on the lookout for funding calls this year for funding in 2025. And we typically send out requests for info sessions when those calls are open. So we have ongoing engagement with students, and please let's keep the conversation going. And then to the question about preparing students for academia, let me say this. All students that receive NRF funding and PGRS funding are required to provide academic citizenship. That means in the sciences, they serve as demis, and they give back because they are getting public funds, and so they're required in a year to do 80 hours of academic citizenship and give back. Now, I don't know that the system wants doctoral graduates to all enter academia. And I also don't know that doctoral graduates are interested in academia. So we need to provide a range of career opportunities for postgraduate students. But I will highlight that DHET manages a Nurturing Emerging Scholars program. That call gets sent out to faculties. It's a master's support program. So successful candidates get 2 years of master's scholarship to complete their studies at a university in South Africa. And then they get 1 additional year of funding for academic internship. So if you visit the research development website, there is a little more information there on the Nurturing Emerging Scholars program. And that answers your question directly. And then I want to say that when it comes to talking about the value of science for society in general, you know that we have our annual Research Week. This year, Research Week falls on 9 to 13 September. We're very happy that we are partnering with the South African Young Academy of Science to roll out our Research Week program. And we understand that there are 15 master's and doctoral students from Mandela that submitted abstracts. Now, I'm told that number is very low. So we will be sending out information to faculties. The organizing committee has made a special dispensation for Mandela to extend the abstract call for us so that master's, doctoral, and postdoctoral fellows can submit abstracts. So, Prof. Melariri, when we send that out, please send it out to faculties so that staff and students can submit their abstracts for the upcoming research week. Thank you. I think I've addressed those questions.
Thank you. So on how we support the type of transfer, so the key is the office basically packages each offering, each disclosure in the best mechanism for transfer. It's easier with technologies and it's easier with services. But I'll make an example. We had a disclosure from the psychology department, and it was basically a questionnaire they've developed for students, or for scholars rather, to identify the right career path for what they studied. So it was a questionnaire, it was a research output at that time. But for ease of transfer, what was needed was you needed to codify it and develop a program and make it, the student can self-access, they can get a guidance counselor. So the knowledge transfer support that's offered is basically how do you package that output, that research output, into a product that can be used. In terms of using some outputs that can go into policy briefs, that's more copyright. So that we work together with legal on those, because the intention is not necessarily to transfer to another organization, but to interpret it in a different context. So it's a different kind of support, but we will guide you through what's necessary. Thanks.
We have time for one more question too. We'll just because it's you, Prof. So is it okay, that's fine. So we'll take that one first and then Prof.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, I'm a part-time student, and I would like to know if we are also entitled to scholarships as part-time, especially as an international student, from the international student perspective. And then I have another question. I've heard people from other institutions saying that for postdoctoral fellowship or studies, there is an age limit. I would like to know, well, some of us do not have the opportunity to go to school early, but would like to further after completing a PhD. So is there an age limit for that? Thank you.
Then Prof.
Thank you so much for all the insightful presentations. It's not actually a question, but maybe a request. I know we are talking about the dropouts, the low throughputs, and the funding limitations and constraints. And we know that international or external fundings will actually help if every department could actually get those funding. And I do know that a lot of colleagues are interested in applying for this, but there is need for that skills acquisition in writing grants, human capacity development in that regards. Is it possible, because we know that different faculties have different peculiarities, is it possible for us in the Faculty of Health Sciences to possibly have your team hosting a workshop to show staff, based on the previous or recorded successes like in Wellcome Trust, NIH, Gates Foundation, these are the tips you need to know before you apply for such grants, to just take them stepwisely. And that will actually excite, interest in applying for such. And I'm happy that Dr. Pioso mentioned that the office is available to, help in the proposal development, but at least a workshop, from your offices to help initiate that. That is the first one. And then the other request is I do know that a good number of our postgraduate students, especially international students, struggle a lot with certain documentations, even SAQA or maybe Home Affairs, visa renewal, and that delays them a lot. And maybe some of them actually came with funding, let's say for 3 years. But the first year, they couldn't start anything because they've not gotten SAQA approval. Is there anything that could be done via your offices to ensure that this is mitigated significantly? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Prof. Our colleague from STP, I'll allow the one question to add in the mix.
So my question is, when in the financial year do we get the Tutuka calls? And if I'm an expiring researcher, so can I be a front line for the over 45? Then I apply as an initiator, and then the 45s comes after me. Is that allowed? Thank you. In fact, the 45s, you mentor them as an expiring. They've been wanting to do research, but of course they've never been a part of engagements. But you, as one person mentoring these people, they want to be researchers as well. So is that allowed? Thank you.
Thank you. I think those questions were for Dr. Mensah and Dr. Motapo.
For the large grants, I mean, I think those typically are for the mid-career to establish researchers. Wellcome does have one for early career scholars, but most of the funding is for mid-career to established researcher. And we have identified it as a problem that people need more preparation for writing those proposals. I think when I was talking, I was giving examples, but it was really for the Gates Foundation grants that were submitted the last 2 months. Welcome, 2 of them that were submitted they were not going to make it through anyway. So we will be providing the proposal support. And also, I think the large part of it is also on the budgeting process. The budget is everything on the proposal. And so I think that a workshop, I know that RD does offer the grant writing support. And there was a workshop a few months ago, maybe in June, I think, there was a workshop on grant writing. But yes, the tailored ones for specific funders like NIH and Wellcome Trust that we are planning to do. So, yep. You can invite us for those specific there.
Hey, thanks, Palesa, for mentioning that. As part of the research development workshops that RD rolls out, there is grant proposal writing included, but we acknowledge the fact that grants target emerging as well as established. And so we will look at how we coordinate so that there's sufficient training opportunities provided in the system for grant application writing. Your question for international students will be best answered by the international office, but I know that this is a support that the international office provides, and they work with the office of the registrar to provide the necessary support. But I acknowledge that it is very challenging to work with Home Affairs. We know that sometimes Home Affairs, if universities come together and submit one single strong motivation to address concerns in the system, then usually they provide waivers. So that's the approach that we've been using. Right, then the question about Tutuka funding. The NRF is very clear about what the criteria for Tutuka funding is. Applications must be submitted by the researcher themselves. It cannot be submitted by a mentor on behalf of a researcher. So I advise when the call opens, and I do want to highlight this because it's a recurring challenge in the Mandela system that planning is key. Funders prepare a year in advance to provide funding. And so the NRF opens their calls in February for researchers, and it closes March, April, May, around April or May, it closes. And that will be for funding the following year. So by this time of the year, if you are thinking about funding for next year, you missed the NRF boat, which means you will not be funded in 2025. You can only be funded in 2026. So I cannot overemphasize the need to plan so that you are very aware of the call cycles. A lot of this information is on our website, but yes, we are very open to help researchers with their planning so that this year already you can put plans in place for next year. We want to work on your plan with you, not just for your funding, but for your postgraduate students, postdoctoral and research fellows, so that there's a long-term plan and you've targeted funders to enable your research. Thank you.
So that brings to the end this session. We're going to have, yeah, was your question not answered? Oh.
Thank you for that reminder. In the core framework, it says preferably 45 years. So it's not an exclusion criteria. It's just preferably. So let's dispel the rumor. There's no age restriction for postdoctoral or research fellows, but the NRF has an age restriction for honors, masters, and PhD students. That's an NRF criteria, not a Mandela criteria.
Thank you. Can we give a round of applause to our directors? Thank you very much. So we'll have lunch now and then we'll reconvene at strictly 2 o'clock because our next presenter is presenting from the USA. So there's a big time difference and he will be live online. And I'm told that lunch will be towards the left side, just through the glass doors where there's a table seating.